Jam setengah 10 pagi di hari Jumat ini gue udah di Peak tiba-tiba. Ingat rumah gue agak jauh dari Peak dan gue sekarang masih ngantuk lah, masih butuh kopi 2 kali. Hari ini mau visit salah satu kantor tech giant di Indonesia, pokoknya giant in the world probably. Gue mau visit kantornya yang ada di Peak juga. Kita mau rekaman podcast yang lo bisa dengar nanti, gue kasih linknya kalau udah siap. Dan kita lihat kantornya tuh kayak gimana. Bisa tebak apa? Jawabannya abis intro.
Things that I'm really curious was a specific moment in your life. We know that you started as an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Right? You
Yes.
built your own company back then.
Yes.
In your own 20s. And then what made you move
Yeah.
into a corporate career?
Yeah. No, so actually, I came from a family of lawyers.
Yeah.
So the most natural instinct is to follow that path and become a lawyer. And
Yes.
I'm from Hong Kong, and Hong Kong is a pretty conservative society focusing on professional industries.
Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship isn't really the forte of Hong Kong.
I see.
So what happened was I got the chance to study in Silicon Valley, and that completely changed my mindset.
Yeah.
The biggest thing was because when you're in that environment, you feel like almost every ideas are possible. And funnily enough, because you're in that area, you're in that city called Palo Alto,
Yeah.
it's very easy for you to run into very, very famous figures and entrepreneurs.
Yes.
So I was in my freshman year, and I already ran into people like Jerry Yang of Yahoo.
Oh.
In the Sunday market, where you shop groceries, you run into Mark Zuckerberg in flip flops.
Wow.
And
This
then-
was when you were in Stanford, right?
Yeah. So very early on, and that was 2006, and because it was you were so close to these people, you felt like, why them? Why not you?
Yeah.
You almost
Yeah,
felt like
yeah, yeah.
what's the difference between us,
Yeah.
right? So that's also the naivety, right? When
Yeah.
you're young and you're a freshman, so you just have so many ideas, and then we read TechCrunch every day. Every day you read about an idea raising like money and
Yeah,
raising
yeah.
funding. So back then it's just a very fertile ground to develop ideas. So that was why I kind of got into my first startup where we built some iPhone apps.
Okay.
And then after that, of course, you kind of started to understand how the real world works. The
Yep.
businesses. It's not just about the idea, the execution, the people management.
Yes.
And you then later find out, okay, if you truly want to build a great company,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you still need to rack up some experience, right? You
I
still need to
see.
basically learn from some of the masters out there. Yeah, so one thing I learned, when we were thinking about, looking back at the career, is that, in the beginning, you almost just followed your heart.
Yeah.
When I was thinking about joining a great company to learn, Flipboard's opportunity popped up.
Right.
And why was there an opportunity was because they are thinking about building a Chinese product.
Right.
And they don't have any Chinese-speaking colleagues. And therefore, I became the natural, kind of natural pick here to
Yeah.
lead the Chinese product.
I
And
see.
because of working on the Chinese product, they said you have to go to China to launch the product. And actually, Hong Kong back then was still quite separated.
Yeah.
Right. And to meet mainland China is actually a completely new experience.
It's different. It's very
they're very
different.
different.
Yeah.
I've never lived there. Thankfully, my Mandarin was okay.
Yeah.
So I just like, okay, why not? You're like early 20s. You just hop on a plane and
Yeah,
get
yeah,
out there.
yeah.
And I've never imagined actually staying in China for so long.
Wow.
Like back then, the hot thing to do was actually be in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Like China was a place where a lot of American tech startups actually fear. Because Google
Yeah,
entered
being
China
blocked,
and
yeah,
blocked.
yeah,
and,
yeah.
Yes.
Yahoo, Microsoft didn't have great successes.
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
so it wasn't the hot trendy thing to do.
Yeah.
But deep down, I felt like I studied in the States for almost studied and lived and worked for almost 10 years in the States, and I know that the China market is booming.
Huge.
Yeah, huge market and a lot of energy there. People are hustling, and therefore I thought when you're young, you gotta try out another market. Don't lock yourself up in just US focused. So yeah, just made that jump and moved to Beijing for Flipboard. So that was why I ended up in Beijing, and one thing led to another.
Yeah.
Which then led me to Xiaomi. Hard work, hard skill.
Yeah.
And I think for me, after being at Xiaomi for 8 years, I really wanted to try to apply what I've learned. The Xiaomi model is very powerful, yet at the same time quite complicated. So I was thinking, if I were to test myself out, I better pick a market that isn't a smooth sail. Better try something that maybe back then Indonesia was dropping. Can I apply the learnings and try to turn it back? Because if it's dropping, that means the trend is going downwards.
Yeah.
If we don't do anything, it will just continue going
Of
downwards. So by applying force, by applying learnings, can I potentially turn it? Right, and that would be a proof that whatever I learned worked. Right, so that was kind of the assignment given. It was a turnaround assignment.
Wah, Alvin gila banget sih. Dia dari keluarga profesional, jadi entrepreneur, jadi akhirnya eksekutif, dan sekarang bikin Xiaomi segede ini di Indonesia. Gokil. Podcast bareng Alvin ini bisa didengar di 30 Days of Lunch, eksklusif di Spotify. Dengerin dan jangan lupa di follow, dan komentar di sini juga bisa. Semoga sayur.